Chapter 2. The Deal. A spurt of blood hit me square in the nose as I struggled to pull a chunk of shrapnel from the mare's back. I had to focus on the task at hoof. Her ear-splitting screams weren't helping my nerve. We tried to dope her up with morphine, but we only had enough to dull the pain enough to keep her awake during the operation, the exact opposite of what I wanted to happen. My telekinesis wrapped around a rod that lay in the fire. Floating it over to me, I gave Hollow Bones a nod. She nodded in return and produced a rope. "Bite down on this, child, lest you bite your tongue off." She pushed. Obediently, the mare put her mouth on the sturdy rope. Having gnawed through 2 already, I believed it. Hollow Bone looked back at me when it was done. The glowing hot rod made me sweat. I sucked in sharply and pressed the rod to the open wound. Kss. Tiny orange hairs caught fire as the hot metal boiled away blood and fused flesh. The mare seized. I pulled the rod off. The bleeding stopped. The wound was cauterized. It was the last one, too. She was still writhing. Her teeth were hell-bent on ripping straight through the rope separating the jaws. "It's okay now. That was the last one," Bones cooed. She stroked the earth pony's sandy mane. The injured pony panted. The ordeal tired her as much as it hurt her. I rolled bandages around her wounds. The morphine finally did its business and put her out, or at least aided in doing so. I gathered the tools and brought them to the water basin. Scrubbing them vigorously, I let out a small chuckle. "We're officially out of old world meds. Unless we can scrounge up some new stuff, we'll be in a bad way," I stated. Bones looked at me with a smile. "And my knowledge of zebra alchemic medicines is not enough?" she asked. "I can think of a couple reasons," I replied. I knew where this was going. "Those being?" she asked again. "First, the ingredients. We have to go venture out, more often than not, past the reefs to get reagents needed. This is dangerous. I nearly got eaten alive by a rad shark while getting the things for the soul nectar," I explained. "Wrong. You nearly got eaten alive because you decided to go out of your way to rescue our 2 guests. You could have very well just went on your way," she added. "If I left them, the blood in the water would have brought more rad sharks into reef territory eventually. I'd rather not that be the case," I countered. "No need to make an excuse for her actions. It's just you're confusing saving the 2 young ladies' lives and gathering ingredients. You're still in the right here," the Zoni assured. She motioned me to continue. "Whatever. Secondly, patience. Most zebra remedies use substances that a large enough number of ponies are allergic to. Pre-warned medications generalized enough that an extremely few number have an adverse reaction to them," I explained further. "There are substitutes for those, many of which are easy to obtain," she countered. "This means every single remedy has to be custom-made for each patient. The time it takes to determine and gather the proper ingredients could kill them," I countered. The Zoni stopped for a moment, and then started to chuckle. "You're getting better at this game we play. You'll be a fine shaman when I'm gone. Now then, go check on the little one. She may yet be awake." She gestured for me to then leave the room. She had things from here. "You let me know if her condition changes," I responded, smiling, making my way towards the door. Exiting the clinic area, I scanned the dockhouse bunks for the filly. The bunk we placed her in was empty, and the door outside was cracked open. Pushing open the door, the filly sat on the bottom step to the ground. A bold yellow 122 emblazoned on her blue jumpsuit reflected off the sunlight, giving her sand-colored coat and brown mane a slight highlight. "Glad to see you're awake." I slid in beside her. She jumped slightly. Her eyes were pretty wide. "Heh, I'm still thinking this is a dream. You sure it in?" Her accent was pretty thick, but from where I couldn't place it. I smiled and poked a bruise on her rump. She sucked in through her teeth, wincing. "Satisfied?" I said, smirking. "Not really," she replied. She shifted back and forth, looking about. "Is this the Somerset Islands?" "No, they're a long ways north of here." "Way north. Did they get turned around somehow? We're about as far south as you can get here in Oceania." "Oh, I was hoping we made it." She sank down a little. I looked around swiftly, searching for someone her age to distract her. Alas, no pony was nearby. "So, where are you from?" I asked. Maybe I could figure out a good conversation topic. "Stable City," she answered. "Nothing I heard of. Must be from farther east." "Where's that?" I inquired, still curious. In mountains round Tottenham? No, Hoofington? Wait, what? That was on the mainland? You're from the mainland? I blurted out. That was impossible. What are you on about? She asked. She leaned back. Obviously to her, the mainland wasn't a big deal. No one's gone out of or came through the storm wall in over 200 years. How'd you do it? I asked excitedly. A mainlander. This was so awesome. The captain found a spot where it weren't so bad after a bit of sailing, and we bolted for it. She shrugged. Then I was practically bouncing up and down. We got hit by Leuchten, and then we... She stopped for a moment. I quickly gave myself a quick mental hoof to the face. I just let her out to recount how her ship crashed. Goddesses damn me. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked. I apologized. No, it's okay. Mum probably knows more. I conked out right then, she said with a thin smile. Her eyes widened suddenly. Is Mum okay? She's sleeping right now. She was in a rough spot, and she could use it, I replied. Her eyes narrowed a bit. She raised an eyebrow. I sighed. We used up the last of our good medicine working on her. Even then it wasn't enough, so we had to burn the wounds closed. We can make more medicine, but without a good sense of her medical history, the stuff we could make might make her worse. It's pretty much up to her now, I stated methodically. Despite her age, she seemed quite mature enough to know the reality of it. She closed her eyes and nodded slowly. She was quiet. I was quiet. Only the waves could be heard. I had to break the silence somehow. What's your name? I asked. Eclair. She looked back up at me. Riptide, I replied. Held my hoof out to her. She touched it with her own. I smiled. Now to go in for the kill. Hey, wanna watch cartoons? I offered. What's a cartoon? She asked. I smiled wider. Ooh, this was gonna be good. Eclair was asleep, lying next to me in the theater. The hum of the projector continued on as I picked her up. She was giggling in her sleep, most likely dreaming of a duck and a rabbit arguing violently, or a colt dressing in drag to mess with the big bad timber wolf. I made my way out of the theater and to the doghouse. It was night. We lit the tiki torches placed around the pathways on the island. The ocean spray cooled the air to a mid-chill. The cloud cover was light enough you could make out a star or two. The other sea ponies were heading back into the water, making their way into their own little nooks and crannies in the reefs. Hollow Bones sent out a few search parties earlier to look for other ponies on the boat. According to Eclair, there were at least 3 others besides her and her mother. It's been several hours since they started. So far, they only brought back chunks of the wreckage. A boat is still a boat, even after it's been ripped to shreds. Inside the dockhouse, Hollowbone stood near the clinic door, her old eyes drifting from each of the non-sea ponies that lived there. She ushered me into the clinic. Eclair's mother was awake. Still lying on the bed, she looked no better than when I left her. I floated Eclair to her. She wrapped a foreleg around her. She then looked back up to me. Well, I'll be the first to say it, I guess. Thank you for saving us, she said. Her voice was slightly husky. She had the same accent as Eclair, but it was far more subdued. My name is Sorbet. Riptide, I introduced myself. Watch out, we got a badass over here, she remarked, snorting as she laughed. Or did your parents really name you that? Well, Mom wanted my name to be Silverscreen, but Dad pressed the issue of my subspecies, I said nonchalantly. She looked around. Her ears and eyes drooped a bit. I noticed we're the only ones here. She had a smile on her face, but it was hollow. I'm sorry, but you two were the only ones I could find. I lowered my head. She closed her eyes and shook her head. It was a foolish thing, this whole trip. Captain was right set on getting through, she said with a pained smile. She nodded to herself. To be fair, you did. No one has gone through the storm wall in 2 centuries. You two are the first ever outsiders to Oceania. I tried to lighten the mood a little. Well, isn't that a thing? Only cost 5 of the best pony kind these days and probably a few pints of my blood, she said sarcastically. I guess getting through wasn't worth it. She kept looking around, sighing after a while. Look, I've got a slight bit of a problem. I came here to do a job. Now, seeing as the state I'm in, you're banking on me healing on my own. I can already tell you it's a rough bet. And if I do it, it will take months. I haven't got the luxury of months. She summed up the situation pretty good. She had a good head on her shoulders, I guess. Let me guess. You want to take your chances at finding a place with better med supplies. I finished for her. She'd rather sail than stay in one place. Understandable. Well, I figured maybe you could do it. Her eyes narrowed on me. Now you're gonna have to explain that one to me, I replied. You needed medical supplies, so do I. Get me some, and I'll get you some. I also need to get to the Somerset Island. If you help me and mine getting there, I can figure out some way to pay you back with interest, she offered. It was so simple. She was cut off from the mainland, so whatever supplies she could ship over would be null. Getting her fixed was a tall order in itself. So I was supposed to take on blind faith she'd pull through? No, we'll do it, Bones interjected. How about I stammered. The Zoni looked at me. I gave her the "Are you serious?" look. We'll take the deal, she reconfirmed. My jaw was wide open. Swooning over to me, she put a foreleg around my neck. I just have to discuss the finer details with my apprentice, and then we can start in the morning. Until then, try to get some rest. You'll need it. She pulled me out of the clinic. Okay, if she thinks she can get out of this one without some kind of resistance, she's got another thing she can't pay, she stated to me bluntly. Of course she couldn't. All of her stuff is... Wait, what? Is she agreeing with me? She'll try to reimburse you, but you must not let her. It would be too much. She continued. Wait, what? I must have had a clueless look on my face, because she continued explaining. Listen, the trip will be payment enough. Yes, we need medical supplies. Yes, she may be able to pay later, but helping her will benefit the reef more than some medicine from the mainland, she explained. Okay, my interest is piqued. How exactly? I asked. This ought to be good. Trade. Our village doesn't have the capability to be truly self-sufficient. The only supplies we have are those that we scavenge from the island, stuff we made ourselves, and from lost ponies. We need caravans, traders, and the like. She elaborated. That made sense. I bet Brass Bits would love to get the parts fixed for that old rifle, I mused to myself. If we are going to be doing that, then let's not forget our biggest asset, the feeder. Start charging outsiders as you come. That's bring enough trade for the stuff we need. That can work, but it all depends on you sending ponies here, she smiled. This could work. I just thought sending some pony to get medicine would have worked. This is a much better plan. I chuckled to myself more than to anything. This is why I'm still the shaman, and you're still the apprentice shaman. No need to get smug, Bones. I've never seen the island so active before. Ponies left and right were working on this bastardization boat. Chunks of the boat that we'd recovered made up a good portion of the craft. The bottom of the boat was made up of surfboards and wood from the wreckage. It had a thatched roof of palm leaves and a sail made from beach towels and a small palm tree. The rubber was made from stuffed red shark fins. The nose had the most important feature, a potted lemon shrub. Oh, and a harness for me to pull the boat. The bastard boat floated near the dock. Sorbet was being loaded onto the boat, Eclair not far behind her. I, however, had to go to the feeder. There was still someone I had to see yet. I walked back behind the feeder, towards the employee entrance. There was a small clearing by the shrubs. 2 headstones stood in the clearing. Serene Scene and Gibson Score. Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. I just wanted to say hi before I left. Probably going to be a while before I come back, I said. I smiled slightly as I rested my head on my mom's tombstone. Watch over the place while I'm gone, okay, Mom? I asked. I moved over to Dad's and placed my hoof on the stone. Make sure Mom doesn't get into too much trouble while she does, okay? I smiled. I could almost feel a spectral bump on my head from my mom. I'll see you later, I said finally. I turned to see Hollowbone standing there. She was smiling. They'll be watching over you instead of the reef, she said to me. How do you figure? I asked. I'll just tell them I got it covered, she replied. Really? Hey, Ma, she says she doesn't need to look after the place, I called back to the graves. Now, I didn't... Oh, please don't call your mother's wrath from beyond. It's not nice. She had a face that pretty much said, not cool. Don't worry about it. Dad would rein her in before that would happen. Most of the time. I started chuckling. Hollowbone still didn't buy it. Gotta love messing with the religious. Even if Mom could, it would just be a playful prank. Bones shook her head. The boat is ready if you are, she stated. Yeah, I'm ready, I replied. The boat was loaded and ready to go. Both Eclair and Sorbet were on already. I had gotten my things. My spear, knife, club, much to Brass Bit's distress, and a new item. Hollowbones had brass bits make some barding for me from the rad shark I killed. It was light, and probably the toughest leather out reef. And, as Brass Bits put it, payment for services rendered. He threw in a necklace made up from the teeth. Hollowbones walked up to me. She patted me on the back and bowed her head. May the goddesses guide you, and may Poseidon clear your path, she prayed for me. And the stars be kind to your life, I returned. She smiled. I'm glad you're remembering something I taught you, she said. Not even half of it, I joked as I turned towards the boat. I was about to get on when I thought of something. This boat needed a name. I thought hard for a moment. The name popped in my head suddenly. I looked around, found an empty bottle of Sparkle Cola. I, Riptide of the Reef, hereby dub this vessel the Poseidon, I shouted as I smashed the bottle against the side. A cheer sounded out. I looked back and I saw a few ponies applauding. A voice called from the newly christened boat. Oi, are you just gonna stand there or are we gonna get sailing? Eclair shouted to me. I smiled and climbed aboard. I smiled wider. Arr, hoist the anchors, me matey, bring up the sails. We are about to make way, I shouted in pirate speak. Eclair and Sorbet were less than impressed. Fine, I grumbled as I steered the boat to the left. The wind caught the beach towel sails. We were heading north, to Somerset Isles. Notes. No significant level progress. Reader's notes. Yeah, got a second chapter of this done. And I'm also working on the Daily Unlife at the same time as this. Alright then. See you guys later. Thanks for listening, I guess.